I knew we were in trouble, or I was in trouble. My time was limited when I saw Dave and Luke. I was on Feeding Frenzy at Monster. They were trying it like this super hard way. Like there was this, I don't know if you've ever been on it, but it's like thin. You go out left, there's a good, so the out left hold they weren't using. Like
Oh, the undercling?
yeah,
Oh.
straight up. And I didn't tell them about the hold. I had actually brushed the chalk off of it so that it wasn't so obvious. So that's my big claim to fame, that I sent a route before Dave Graham.
We've got an impromptu episode where I talk with Ward Smith, the author of the Rumney guidebook. Ward put up iconic routes like Predator, Feeding Frenzy, and Parallel Universe. I loved hearing his stories from the early days of Rumney, how he approached training, and his take on what makes China Beach special. It was a free-form conversation, so check out the timestamps in the description to jump to specific topics, but I really encourage you to listen to the whole episode because you get a picture of Ward, the climber and the person. He was putting up 5:14 first ascents in the 90s. He was so ahead of his time. As a side note, this should be a pretty exciting spring season at Waimea, so follow China Beach Podcast on Instagram for updates.
Do you live in the Rumney area?
No, I live in Wendell, which is near Farley. 10 minutes from Farley. We just bought a house just over the line in Wentworth this summer. So we're 8 minutes from the Rumney parking lot. 5 minutes from the Buffalo Pit parking lot, which is good. So, yeah. So we've been looking up there for years to buy something, and I'm a cheap bastard, so I kept saying no. Finally, we bought something, and now my wife is like, wow, this is really expensive having two houses. I'm like, really? I'm surprised, you know? We've got 2 property tax bills, 2 electric bills, 2 oil bills, you know, but it'll be good. So
You're climbing.
I'm actually looking
matters.
forward to spending more time up there. I haven't been going up there that much in the last, well, my wife and I had a daughter who's now 11. So we've been staying a little closer to home. We're still climbing, but yeah, it's a 10-minute drive to Farley and 2 hours and 20 minutes to Rumney. So it's kind of, you know.
It's a lot of Farley.
Yeah, a lot of Farley. But Farley, I love Farley, but it's not Rumney. So, yeah.
It's the Rumney of V10 boulders only.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I don't believe we've ever met. I've met Chris.
Yeah.
But I used to live in Portland, Maine.
Yeah.
And so we climb in.
Well, Chris and I just
weekend.
did a podcast for First Ascent. I don't know if you listened to that.
Oh, Jay and Lee.
Jay and Lee. We just did one on
love
Sunday,
it.
so I have not heard it yet, so I can't say whether or not it'll be any good, but it should be somewhat entertaining. I kind of like their style. I like their free-form kind of style. You know,
Yeah.
I end up listening to podcasts. Like, I never really got the podcast, but I end up, like, I drive a lot for my work, so it's like, it's great to just put a podcast on and listen to it while you're driving, you know? Because I love music, but you can't listen to the same thing over. You know what? You know, and the news is depressing usually, and it's so. I like podcasts. I listen to a lot of. I don't know if you ever listen to Dave McLeod's stuff.
Oh yeah.
I love his stuff, especially his nutrition stuff. I think is awesome.
He went so deep on.
It's so, yeah, and that's. I mean,
Yeah.
he is so scientific, and he's so. You know, and he goes out of his way to say, I'm not advocating anything, but this is what I did. This was my results, you know, because his point is well taken. I mean, there are no good double-blind studies on a keto diet versus, you know, so they're all like observational studies, and there's so many confounding factors. You can't tease out what's the reason. Why are people obese? And they're like, well, it's the meat. Well, the people who are eating meat are drinking beer, they're drinking soda, they're eating pasta. There's all this stuff that gets all mixed together. So how do you tease out any of that unless you do? Did you see his one about the McDonald's patties that just came out? It's like
I just saw that. I can't believe how just how disciplined he was at sticking with that.
Well, I've tried the keto diet because of him, really, because like a lot of people, completely dismissed it out of hand, and it works, It
works.
I don't know about the long-term health effects, if any, but certainly in the short term, you lose weight and you're not hungry, which is the problem with the standard way of losing weight. You're just supposed to restrict your calories, and it's like, well, if I have a small portion of pasta, I'm starving in 45 minutes. I mean, I can't, So it's like the people who criticize him, I don't think have ever tried any of those dietary interventions,
I've been doing keto in like one meal a day for a while.
Oh, one meal a day, that's great.
And it's super convenient for climbing. It's like you don't have to pack food.
Right. And I've been doing the intermittent fasting, but I'm more like I try to eat before 5 and not before 9. So I do like a 5 to 9 fast every day. Most of the time, I'm not like totally obsessed with it. If there's an occasion we go to somebody's house, whatever,
Yeah.
But that just for me is easy, just because of what you say. You're not hungry. I'm not, if I eat at 5, I'm not hungry before I go to bed. So why was I eating at 7 or 8 before? It doesn't, and, and my wife likes to eat later, but like I told her, it's like, if I eat later, I'm hungry at 3 or 4, and so I eat something then, and then I eat again. So this way, if I just eat at 4 or 5, before 5, it works. So.
Yeah.
So are you on China Beach? Are you working China Beach? Have you done China Beach?
I have not done China Beach, but okay, so maybe the second climbing trip ever in college in like 2008, 2009 was to Rumney. I was climbing like 510.
Yep.
And the first route I hopped on, was Jaws. Because, you see it there, and I'd heard about it. And then I was like looking up at China Beach and thinking like, this would be amazing someday.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Portland right after college, and it was like maybe a year. I'd been climbing at Rumney for about 3 years, and done Butt Bongo Fiesta, like first 13.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine was moving away, and before he moved away, he wanted to try China Beach. So I belayed him on China Beach, and he flailed up it. Like we had no beta, and then I tried the bottom, and I got like 2 bolts up. I did barely the bottom boulder problem, and then just looked up at the seam. It's like, oh my god! And so then I just started. I'd heard it had been done to the break, so I started working on it to the break.
Right.
I probably spent like 30 days over the next couple years, and then like red pointed to the break right before I moved back to California. And,
okay. Yeah.
And so then, since then, I've been going out. I've been trying to go out every.
You say the break. It's like there is a break there, but it's not much of a. You know what I mean? It's not much of a rest or a hand jam or anything. It's kind of like you're right in the middle of the hard climbing. It's an obvious. I agree. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's just funny when you say break. If nobody's ever been on the route, it's like, yeah, it's a break, all right. It's
That's a good point. It's a break in the rock, not in the climb.
There is a horizontal something there that divides the route into 2 halves. I will, yes.
Yes.
I climbed to the break. I don't know how many times I did to the break a lot, and the next move, getting out of the break, is really hard. And that's kind of the stop. Well, you think that's the stopper until you get through that. Then the stopper is the top. Or the rest of it. The rest of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Well, once I get through once I do that section, I'll go to the top. No, no. I mean, I'm sure some people do, but not me. So I don't know if you want. And you already interviewed Dan Nguyen, I think, right? Who did that to the.
Yes. We got sort of the history of why he called it China Beach. When I was out there, some friends and I watched. We watched the first episode of China Beach, which was
really?
pretty cool, really intense. Yeah.
I've never seen it, so.
I'd recommend it, but it's not light. It's
Really?
like it's a good show, but pretty intense about the war.
So I got involved with that when I started climbing. Well, I started climbing to Rumney in the '80s, but I really started putting up roots in the early '90s, and I put up Barracuda in '95. And that was by far my hardest route I'd ever done. I mean, as I said, if you listen to my podcast, I didn't really know how hard things were because I just was into putting up new routes. So like my first 12C was at Mormon Hollow. My first 12D was at Mormon Hollow. First ascents. My first 13A was at Mormon Hollow. My first, down here in Western Mass. My first 13B was at Farley. These were routes that I kind of thought I knew what they were, but I didn't really, because I didn't have anything to compare them to. And I'm still that way. I mean, I like doing other routes, but I like doing other routes I can do quickly. Like, I don't have it in me to project a really hard climb that's not a first ascent. I just don't, I don't have enough drive, but somehow, for whatever reason, it's this little quirk in my genes or something. I just love new routes. I love first ascents, and I get excited about them. And so Barracuda was a thing I worked I think it was when I did excessive force at Mormon. I spent 31 days on that, cleaning it, bolting it, and before I sent it, right? So then I went on Barracuda and I just stopped counting because it was more than 31 days. I don't know how long it was, but it was a long two seasons. It wasn't that long in retrospect, but it was. I started on it probably in the spring, and then I worked on it in the fall and the summer. To me, it's too hot. I see people on China Beach in July, and I'm like, I don't know. I can't even conceive of what the hell you're doing up there. But guys like covered in sweat, and they're doing pretty good on it. I'm like, Jesus, dude, you gotta come back. I was like, I needed to have like the conditions perfect. I like things crisp, dry, October, April. You can go either side of that some, but I do best when it's like just before your fingers are going numb. Like fingers going numb is not good, but just before that. So you don't have to chalk, because chalking's another move.
Yeah.
Yeah. The less you have to chalk, the better. So I said this if you listen to the podcast. So I went to I was trying Barracuda off of Urban Surfer, which became known as Concrete Jungle, which is kind of the link up. The easiest way up that section of wall. The bottom of Urban's not that hard before you get to the 13A crux. Not that hard, whatever. It's a 12 probably. And then you go over and you do the top, and you got to do that boulder problem. And the boulder problem on Barracuda took me 8 days to figure out how to do it. Just hanging on the rope, figuring out.
Did you do the toe hook way or the pinch way?
Yeah, toe hook way.
The toe hook way.
And if you listen to the podcast, I'm going to be repeating some of that, but why not? It's a good backstory. And so I went on a trip to, Dale Goddard's book came out, Performance Rock Climbing, which was like the first, I think it's still a good book if you've never read it. Some of it's dated, but he did a periodized thing where you do so I did like a block of just arc training, endurance training, like easy 30 minutes on the wall, working on your technique. And then I did a block of like a month of just bouldering, power training. And what was amazing to me was after not bouldering again, I hadn't lost anything in bouldering because my technique was so much better, even though I was weaker. So then I was on a trip to Waco Tanks, and I was working on Better Eat Your Wheaties, a V9, which I did really well on the first day. And, I I say young, I was in my 30s, but young to me now. And I took one rest day and I'm like, yeah. And I get on it and I'm like this little undercling. I was like, oh, wow, that hurts. And I kept trying it and I blew a tendon and you could hear the pop.
Oh, no.
You could hear the pop. But it was at the beginning of my trip. So I'm like, I'm not going to not climb. Like, now I understand the best thing to do is to keep climbing, but at a moderate grade, not hard. But I'm like, I'm just going to keep climbing, but I'm not going to crimp with that hand. I'm only going to crimp with my right hand. I'm going to open hand everything. And so this is like February, and I did my first V8 on that trip. I ended up sending Better Eat Your Wheaties the next year, but not that year. And I did my first V8. I had an open hand at sloper at the crux, so I could do it. I could do that. And then I came back and I got back on concrete jungle, and I did that in like April. And then I got on the direct start, and
the Barracuda corner.
The Barracuda corner, and I was running out of time because, like I said, it's. I think I didn't send it till May, but usually it's in the shade in the morning and the sun's coming around. I got up there, I did it with a toe up beta, but as my foot came off, it caught the rope and gave my harness a little tug, kept me from swinging out so much. And then I did the dyno to the top, and my belayer Dave Quinn's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, everybody thought I sent it, but I knew I hadn't, you know what I mean? So it was like one of my, I relate this on the podcast. It was really, I was proud of myself because it was, I wanted it so bad. I knew I was running out of time, and I'm like, he lowers me off. I'm like, no, I didn't do it.
No.
I got a little aid from the rope. So then the next weekend we go up there, and it's cold. There's ice at the bottom of the cliff. And I sent it, and it was like the last day of that season. So that was going to be, for me anyway, I'm not, sending weather. So I'm like, okay, I want to get on something harder than that, whatever that is. I thought it was 13C is what I called it. It's probably, people say 13D, maybe harder, but we don't want to go there. But it doesn't get many ascents. Cold War gets more ascents than Barracuda, And that might be the grade because it's a 14A instead of a 13D, but they're right.
Also a stopper boulder problem.
Stopper boulder problem at the top. So right away I got on China Beach. China Beach, the bottom had draws up to the horizontal. The top had some random bolts, but it wasn't really bolted right. It was kind of bolted for jaws more than, jaws and China Beach were kind of both kind of bolted, but not, so I redid.
So it had not seen an ascent at this point.
It had to the horizontal.
So Dan had done it to the horizontal.
Yes, but nobody had really worked on the upper section because there's like, I don't know, where there's that undercling that you go up for. That undercling had a little loose piece of rock in it that I pulled out, and then I reinforced it with glue. So there was, hand pull out, it wasn't really, but there, I don't think anybody had even worked on the top half. So I started working on it, and I'm like, I remember thinking, I can do this. I could do all the moves. I could do,
Wait, can we first, before we go on, can we double click into the undercling? Because this is like the first I've heard about any like maintenance on the route.
On the upper section, not the lower.
On the upper section. Yeah.
So you get the undercling off the horizontal, and you suck up, and you go like, and remember the beta, right? You go up on
you go to the crimp.
And you get your right foot on the horizontal, and then you go like this, and you get these little side pulls, and your right foot up, and then you go up into the undercling. That undercling.
Yeah, so the one that's like a little pocket.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of a thin flake.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that had a
chalkstone or something
piece out of it that I took out of it, and then tacked some glue in it so it didn't rip off.
But it looks like it didn't, like you don't feel any glue when you put your hand up in there. It looks like it was just like in the back.
Straw, so you use like you're not supposed to glue in national forest now, but back then they didn't have that policy. So, and a lot of people glued at Rumney, so I don't feel like I did anything wrong. The other thing I will say I glued was when I was working on it, and I thought I was really close, at that first horizontal, there was a piece that started getting loose that was going to make it a lot easier. And I reinforced that so that didn't come up.
Like At the horizontal break.
At the horizontal, where you go up into the underclings. I don't remember exactly where it was. I think it might have been under, but it was starting to come up. It was starting to get wiggly.
And it would have made the hold bigger.
Would have made the hold bigger.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
no, that's cool to know, because like we've talked a lot. So many people have talked a lot about how it seems like those holds were made for the route. It's like they're so perfect for the movement. They force the movement.
Well, the one off the horizontal where you go up for the crimp, if you watch the way the water runs down and has made that hold, like the erosion of the,
it's so cool to see.
You need that hold, like if that hold, well, I'm not saying it wouldn't go.
The sawtooth hold.
Yes.
You really need that.
Well, I needed it, but I mean, I'm sure what people are climbing now, I don't know, but what was, what's tough about China Beach, as you know, if you've worked on it, is yes, the individual moves and the individual sections are hard, but it's putting the whole thing together that's hard, that makes it hard. I mean, I know the boulder problem. I don't know what people would rate that as a boulder problem, but it's not like super hard. Maybe it's V7 or V6 or I don't know. Like how hard is it? But it's it's like after you get to the you got that little rest, and then once you start up into that little corner, it's like every move is V5 or V whatever. There's no.
Every move is a move. Yeah.
Every move is a move. There's no rest. There's no shake. There's no So I worked on it from 95 to 99 when I gave it up to Dave Graham, because Dave Graham and Luke and those guys were they were just blasting through everything, and I was working on Parallel Universe 2 at the same time. And I was close to doing Parallel Universe, and I'm like, maybe they'll give me another month on Parallel Universe if I give up China Beach, because those guys were just ripping through everything, like, I mean, they were so much better than anybody else, they were just that next level of good, kids.
What was the like the social convention at the time about kind of red tagging routes like this?
Well, at the time, initially, again, I went into this in the podcast with Lee. We were like Team Tough, and it was like Team Tough was a team, so everybody had their own thing, and nobody was competing with anybody else. It was all like, if you were on something, that I'd belay you, I'd help you, whatever you needed. I might get on your route if you wanted some beta, had trouble with a section, but I wouldn't take your route. And I didn't, Mallery was working on urban, and Dave Graham ended up snaking it on him because he didn't give it up. But I didn't get on urban because that was his project. And there were other things that, what I mean?
There's other things to do. Yeah.
But it's different for me because I'm a bolter. There were people like Dave Graham and Luke. They didn't bolt anything, so they're just showing up to the cliff like, well, here's these bolts. Why can't I climb it? And I understand that, but the other side of that is how much time did the person who put the bolts in spend cleaning it, and and I think that's an ethical thing. There's got to be a happy medium, and that's why I gave up China Beach, because I'm like, I've been on this damn thing for 4 years, and I'm not sending it. So Dave obviously is good. Can send. I think he had to work on it like 2 days or something. It was a big project for him, but. Anytime he had to come back to something that was like, wow, that must be hard. They had to come back. Didn't do it the first day. And I had, like I said, I was using, again, the Dale Goddard method, and his big thing was you want to send the route to the anchors. So don't start at the bottom and see how high you can get. Start at the top and see how low, low pointing.
The low point.
People called it.
Yeah.
Called it. So I was doing it from one bolt below the horizontal to the top pretty consistently.
That's a good link. That's a very good link.
So I'm thinking that's
it's the lower crux.
That's including the bottom crux. And
yeah, there's the bottom crux and the.
So I'm thinking, well, and I should have started 2 bolts below the horizontal, but I thought, well, if I can start 2 bolts, I'm just going to start at the ground. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was, for whatever reason, it was just that much extra hard that I couldn't do it, because I just, I'd be like 1 bolt below the horizontal, I should have it, right? I mean, that's
the most of the route,
hard climbing, but it's not 100% of the hard climbing, So it's kind of great that you have this, because I'm totally happy with the way everything worked out, because if I had set that route, it would have been the first 14B in the east probably, and I would have been an asshole. So I would have been too big for my britches. But when I was working on that thing, and when I felt was getting close, I couldn't conceive of not being able to do it, of failing on it, because I don't want to say I've failed on shit, but I've never failed on stuff that I really applied myself to other than that. That's the one route that I really was like, I can do this route, I got to work on this route, and I worked on it and I failed, I mean, that's the one that just, that was where I raised to my level of incompetence, I guess, and that's it. So I
mean, it's a pretty high level of incompetence.
Yeah, well, especially for me, I'm not, I climbed as hard as I did because I was, well, for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't mind working the shit out of stuff. I didn't mind, like I said on Barracuda, 8 days to figure out that boulder problem. Like most people would never do that, And as I said the same thing on the podcast. I'd go to the gym. There weren't many gyms back then, but I'd go to the Boston Rock Gym. There was some Steve Potter. I remember watching him climb. I probably never heard of him. Super strong. I knew he was better than I was, but these guys wouldn't do, most of these guys would go up there, they'd get on something like that, and they'd be like, this is like way too hard. I'm not,
Too hard, yeah.
Whereas I would be like, I don't know, I'm going to try this. And hang up there for, that was a good thing about having the team then, and somebody would build, you got to have a belayer. So the belayers, you're up there hanging, you're like, I don't know. Oh, come back another day. Try it another day, because I was trying the dyno way at the top of Barracuda, and I finally figured out what worked for me, the toe hook beta. And so I didn't mind that. I liked that, and the thing the part of the red point process I don't like is like where I got to China Beach but failed, where you're getting close and you've got pressure. That's the part that now you got pressure. Like I climb much better without pressure. In fact, lots of my hardest on-sites were no pressure, where I was tired, I'd already flailed on, so I'll just go up this thing, try this thing, and I, on-site a relatively hard grade. The pressure is tough. That's why I sucked at competition. My wife was really good at it because, her normal arousal, there's an optimal arousal for climbing, and it's somewhere,
right.
Goddard goes into that in his book. It's not like a 50-yard dash where you've got to be like, ah, or football, and it's not like
good zone.
And it's not like golf where you got to be super mellow. It varies through the climb, but it's somewhere in between. And my normal arousal level is high. I'm already psyched to climb. So like the pressure of a competition puts me like into the I'm just too. Whereas my wife is kind of like, I don't really care, So the competition pushes her into an optimum state of arousal, and she climbs her best in a competition.
Okay. Okay.
So
yeah.
So that's the psychological aspect of that, So what I'm saying is, I don't think, my hardest boulder problem is the V10, and I've only done like 2 of those. I'm not that good of a climber. I'm saying physically.
So you were route climbing like very near, like right at your bouldering limit, basically.
Oh yeah. Like parallel universe is
that's like a V10, right?
That's people call it V10 to 13B.
Yeah.
And and nobody does it the way I did it. Everybody starts on the cheater stones. I started to the left off of a slab with no cheater stones, dry slab. So I was doing like a number of moves that people aren't doing anymore. They're cutting off.
You do have that comment in the guidebook, hinting at that.
Well, it's like that's my problem with cheater stones, and I get it, but how many cheater stones is too many? So that's why I did that on that climb, because I'm like,
this is where it starts. Yeah.
And if I use one cheater stone, why can't somebody put 5 or 10?
Yeah.
So I use 0 cheater stones on it. I use the stone to stop to where it's wet to get onto the slab for my feet. But you know what I'm saying? I wasn't standing on the stones to start the climb. I was standing on the stones to get to the dry patch of rock. And so that was another one. That thing took me forever to figure out that boulder problem. And then it got to the point where I'd sail through that boulder problem every time and fail on the red point crux, which was, not that hard. And it's, like it's one of those ones I'd warm up, I'd pull through the boulder problem, I'd do the top, like, I don't want to say no problem, but you know what I mean. I wasn't falling up there. And you do that, like, and then I'd do the boulder problem, and it was like, power endurance is kind of my weakness, really. It's like I'd be on parallel. It's the same thing with China Beach. I'd feel like really good, and all of a sudden it would be somebody just took the plug and pulled it out of the wall, and I'd have like my energy would go.
Man, China Beach is like the ultimate power endurance test as well. Yeah, and it can. I tell this story on the podcast when I did parallel. I finally pulled through it. I got to the clipping bucket, and I was so pumped I couldn't clip the anchors. So I'm in a panic because I'm like hanging on by 2 hands. I know if I let go with one hand, I'm going to fall, and I'm punting at the anchors. So the crack of parallel goes. I don't know if you've been on parallel or looked at it. The crack continues over the top, which I never thought was going to be an issue, but I like lunged and threw my wrist into the crack at the lip like this, so that I could clip the anchors. I was so pumped. I was like, done. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, you get so pumped. I mean, it's cool about climbing. You get so pumped that you can't hang on to a bucket. I'm on a bucket. I can't hang on to a bucket. I mean, I could hang on with 2 hands, but I couldn't hang on with one. Right at that limit.
And that's kind of cool. So so anyway, that's my story on China Beach, and I it was like a love affair, and I'd go up there and I'd just get on it, and I'd get on it, and I'd get on it, and I'd get on it, and in retrospect, I could have done a little bit better. I should have done. I really didn't like gyms. I've kind of embraced gyms more. Gyms are so much better now than they used to be too, but really could have power endurance trained a lot better than I did, because I would get on. You listen to interviews with Adam Ondra, like when he's working on silence, and he says, you have to be fully rested to try something at your limit. So you lose fitness because you can't train and work on your hard project at the same time. So I would get to, it would happen every season. I would think I'm ready. I'd get on the thing. I'd do better and better every time I got on it. And basically I'd get on it twice a week. I'd climb, like usually Wednesday. I work for myself, so I've always tried to set up my life so I can go climbing during the week, whatever day was better, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And then I'd get on it again on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. And if it was Saturday, I would then Sunday just do like volume to try to not lose too much fitness. Just do a bunch of easier climbs, but because you're on, you warm up and you get on it. I'd work on the top first. I'd always do the moves. I get like 1 burn on it. I would,
Yeah. I can't climb that much on it.
I couldn't, So so the season would start, I'd do better, better, and then I'd get to a point where I was not getting any better, and then I'd start getting worse, It's the same thing. So it was like, okay, so it was like, I'm just saying in retrospect, I think I would train in modern gyms, you can really train a lot better than the old days.
Yeah.
Or outdoor train, but because you don't have that much, at least I don't have that much, it was at my limit. I didn't have that much, I didn't have that many days on it, that many, but I didn't quite.
I know, yeah. It's like definitely like past my limit. And the last trip this past October, I was climbing on nothing else. So sometimes there's like one working burn, and then a day of rest.
Yeah.
And then another working burn, and then a day of rest.
And it's fingery.
And I made progress, but it's very
fingery, and so I don't know. I have no regrets about it. Of course I wished I'd sent it, but it was fun. The whole thing was fun. I had fun working on it. I had fun, thinking I was going to do it.
Wait, so going back to when you started working on it, so Dan had already done To the Break.
Yeah.
Was John Mallery still working it? Like, who was working it when you started?
Nobody. I think John Mallery had been on it. I don't know whether he'd done it or not to the horizontal, but his big thing was Urban Surfer, and that was kind of same thing he ended up doing it after Dave had done it, actually. But he worked.
Did Dave do Urban Surfer, or did he do Cold War?
He did Urban Surfer, and then he did Cold War.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he kind of snaked it on Mallery. Mallery, in the long run, it was good because John ended up doing it. I think he was feeling that pressure too, and he was doing the same thing. He was getting on it and doing the same. I mean, I'd see him do the same thing. It would be like, I don't know if you've been on urban. You do suburban, you get to the knee bar, and then you got a boulder problem, out of it. And I know he got through that and fell, but every time I saw him, he wouldn't warm up. He'd hike up to the bottom, he'd climb suburban to the knee bar, and then he'd fall. He'd come out of it and fall. He'd do the same thing. It was like, wow. It was not. He didn't have good tactics, but I think he was feeling the pressure because both of us knew there were people who could just climb these routes. Even back then, I mean, the Euros, they were good, maybe nobody was going to flash them, but you know what I mean. So people could climb them, but it wasn't until Dave and Luke showed up that there were actually people locally that could climb them, at least easily, relatively easily. Yeah. And I think Dave just had climbed everything he could climb, and it was kind of hanging there. And John Mallery tried that route for I don't know how many years, but a long time, at least 8 years or something. And then he ended up, I think, sending that and Cold War, like the next year. So it worked. I mean, he didn't get the first ascent, but he did the route. So I mean, I think it's cool. Dave was just unstoppable, and I mean, still, I don't know if you see him, he's still climbing hard.
Yeah, I think he had his like best year ever. Multiple like V16s.
Yeah. So nobody was working on it. So it was kind of just there. Same with Jaws. Nobody was working on that.
Right, and that was before break, so that was like 14C. Dave would do that pretty quickly.
I think it was, they rated it 14B, but who knows? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they didn't know. It probably was 14C. I don't. At least BC. It was definitely hard before.
Dave, I remember chatting with Dave during one of the nor'easters at the right end of Waimea, and he was looking up at They Died Surfing and said he thought it was 12B when they did it. And he's like, we didn't know.
Yeah, well, I knew we were in trouble, or I was in trouble. My time was limited when I saw Dave and Luke. I was on Feeding Frenzy at Monsters. and they were using cheater stones, which was, I didn't, but they were trying it like this super hard way. Like there was this, I don't know if you've ever been on it, but it's like thin. You go out left, there's a good, so the out left hold they weren't using. Like
Oh, the undercling?
Yeah.
Oh.
Straight up. And I didn't tell them about the hold. I had actually brushed the chalk off of it so that it wasn't so obvious. So that's my big claim to fame, that I sent a route before Dave Graham. Snaked the route on Dave Graham. I guess really. But I'm watching those two, he and Luke, and they were just like no tactics. They were in high school at the time, and just like one of them would go up, fall, like lower down, untie. The other guy would go up, fall, lower down, untie. They just were like boom, 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 boom. They weren't resting at all. They weren't like, I was like, and they were trying it like a five. The way their sequence was like looked all of 514 to me. I was like, whoa, that's like, and they were almost doing it. They were almost doing it. I was like, holy shit, these guys are like, if they get their shit together, they're gonna, which they did, obviously, they're gonna really just. So they just ended up we had all these open projects that were bolted, that we weren't good enough to climb, and they just, started taking them off until they ran out of stuff. And then, people bolted stuff for them. I mean, I guess the Bill Clinton project, but nobody sent that yet. But that was kind of bolted for them or for whoever, like.
Who bolted that?
Mark Sprague.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I guess it still hasn't been sent.
All the moves have gone, I've heard.
And
but
the other one that's not bolted but is to the left of the fly, Superfly.
Superfly.
There's a route there, some kind of 515. It's short, but it's good rock, and they're hard. I've checked it out. There are enough holds for it to go. I think Dave Graham did all the moves on it, but nope. I thought for sure that one would have been sent a long time ago. I just don't think anybody that's good enough to do it is really. It's not like a classic or anything, but it's kind of an obvious
hard boulder.
Yeah, if it was a boulder problem, I mean, it would be probably a V15 or 16 or whatever. I don't know what it would be, but hard.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks great.
I've heard the rock is impeccable.
I've heard people have done it like in the last, I don't know, 5 years or so. I've heard a rumor that two people the moves have gone, but not by one person. Like
really?
Two people have done different sections of it.
Well, that's a route that if you know somebody that actually was working on that, I would be willing to put the bolt. It's going to be like a stick clip and then another bolt or something. But I don't want to do that until somebody can say where the bolt should be.
That's the.
I mean, I could bolt things, but that's hard. So I don't want to put the bolts in the wrong place and put a nice couple of glue in bolts in. But that would be really cool to see, because I mean, to me that's an obvious line. If I could climb it, I would, but I can't. So.
Okay, so I got to ask you the big question: what's your take on China Beach? Like, what's the quality of China Beach as a route?
I think it's the best route at Rumney. I mean, to me, I mean.
Why do you think that is? Why is that?
Well, it's on the best cliff, Waimea, with the best rock, and it's a obvious line in the middle of an overhanging swell. That left end thing. I mean, when I first went up there and climbed that crack, which is this 10A next to it, I mean, I remember looking at that like, this is just a beautiful piece of rock, and it's in the middle of this beautiful piece. It's not like marginal, it's not on the edge, it's not like squeezed between, there's some hard routes in the country, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I mean, like, to bolt or not to be, it's Smith Rocks. Like, yeah, it's classic, but it's like, it's on this panel with easier routes, not that far on either side of it. Like China Beach, there's nothing within your view that's distracting, like an easier exit or a hand crack or a corner, or you're just in the middle of this, and there's no rest, which makes it awesome. There's no break. I mean, the nature of climbing at Rumney is most of the routes are broken to some extent. I mean, that's just the way it is. Like, I don't know if you've done the Crusher, like that's my route. That's 11D at Orange Crush. It's a great route, but it's like you do a boulder problem, and then you got a no hands rest, and you climb up to a no hands rest. You know what I mean? It's
or like techno surfing.
Even techno surfing, yeah.
3 boulder problems,
and it's a great route, but you get you have you do that corner, which is kind of funky, 11 plus or whatever people call it. It's probably polished as hell now, so it's probably a lot harder. And then you get a no hands rest. And then you climb the crux bulge, and then you're standing on a ledge with the no hands rest. And then you do the top, which is really cool, and I think it's a brilliant route. I'm not slagging it, but if you imagine if it had that crux bulge, even if there was the first rest, if you had that crux bulge into the upper big moves on those flakes, it would be a harder route, but it would be cooler in a way, it would be cooler. And that's what China Beach has going for it. It's no break, no interruption of difficulties. It's unusual. And you said something like that. It's unusual to find a route that's that consistent, where it just all the moves are hard but not impossible, and they just build on each other. So they build and build and build, and and that's what makes a great route. For me. And visually it's just stunning. You can't help but walk by the cliff and look at it and go, wow, look at that. What's that climb,
Yeah. You turn the corner, and it's like glistening.
You got the stripes, and they got all those stripes of the the quartzy stripes and the orange stripes, and everything's just like, look at that. Yeah. So
would you ever get back on it?
I would get back on it. I mean, who knows? I'm off of my, I'm 62 now, so my hardest routes in my 50s were like mid 13 and V9, and my hardest routes in my 60s are like 12D and V7 or 8. I'm talking outdoor routes, not gym grades. But my first goal is I want to do some more 13s and V9 if I can, again. And I think I can. For me, it's all about weight. Weight is a factor for me. I struggle to stay below 160. And when I climbed Barracuda, I was 148. And when I did parallel, I was 154. And I think, I did this, the boulder problem I did a year ago. It's out of Arizona. We're developing this obscure area. So I don't really know how hard it is. It's 7 anyway, maybe 8. I started the trip at 161, and it was only a 10-day trip, but I did hardcore keto. And it was like a 3-mile approach in the snow every day. So by the end of the trip, I was 154 in like 10 days. And I know I wouldn't have sent that boulder problem if I'd been 160. You know what I mean? I know I wouldn't have. I just know I wouldn't have. So I'm fortunate in that my health is good. I don't have any problems other than I broke my ankle and messed my wrist up in an avalanche when I was 29, and they're both kind of stiff, but so they limit my flexibility on certain problems, but it's not really a limiting thing. So before we talk about China Beach, I've got to get back to doing some more 13s and V9 boulder problems, and then I would get back on it. Sure, why not? I mean, I think it's a great route. I probably would do what I used to do. I'd hike around and wrap in and get on a top row.
Get on the top.
and
and wrap in. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because now people, they kind of swing over and pull on jaws to get above the crux.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's like 5'11".
Yeah.
Pulling on draws.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to stick clip up past the
Yeah.
break.
Well, anything you could do to save energy, you know. But
Yeah.
I would be happy to send it on a top rope, honestly. You know what I mean? It's probably what I should have done.
That'd be tricky just because of the steepness of it.
Yeah, but it's just a swing, you know. Unless you fall off the
it's a
very
swing.
bottom boulder problem, which I've never fallen on. So
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could now, but you know, my problem is I still think I can climb it. Do you know what I mean? In my head, like I still feel like I could do it, which is kind of weird. Because I haven't given up on myself as far as my ability and everything. I don't have any health issues. You know what I mean? Like I have no health problems, so I can still climb. I can still do all of that. I just got to suck it up. Quit drinking. You know, I love alcohol. I try. You know, I drink. I limit myself to 3 days a week. That's. You know, I like wine. It's not like I'm a huge drinker, but I like, you know, I like to get a little buzz on. Not a purist. But I mentally, I feel like if I really want something, I can do it. But physically, I don't know. I'm kind of, I guess, you know, this is men are that way a lot. We get to be in denial about things. We don't have like women where you have this like menopause happens and it's boom. For men, it's kind of like you just kind of have this long, slow decline, you know, of your testosterone levels, and it doesn't. It's not like one day you go, oh shit, I'm old, you know. It kind of sneaks up on you. But I'm still climbing, you know, at least 3 days a week. I climb a lot more in the gym now, just because we have a really good gym here, and I do a lot of work in the area. It's about a half an hour away, so I can do a job and then go to the gym, or go to the gym and then do a job, so it works out. And I get a good workout in there. They've got a Kilter Board. I don't know if you've ever been on a Kilter Board, but...
There's a China Beach. If you search Kilter for China
really?
Beach simulator, I made 2. The second one's still work in progress, but the first one is a slightly easier version of that top crux.
Oh. You mean off the horizontal for that, or the?
Yep, off the horizontal. You have to. It's not a force simulator, so you have to use like just the parts of the holds that make sense for the route.
Yep.
But if you try it, let me know. Let me know what you think.
I will. I was just on the Kilter Board yesterday, so I didn't know there was such a thing. But you know, I never really got into gym climbing that much. I just went because there was no alternative. And then a couple of years ago, I'm just like, my wife doesn't like to climb when it's cold. I'll go outside. I don't care, you know, bouldering usually in the winter, but I like being outside. I like real climbs. But a couple of years ago, I'm going to embrace this gym climbing, and it's been good. It's been fun, you know? And so I try to do like a mixed thing where I do, you know, I'll boulder or Kilter Board one day, I'll do roots another day, and another day I'll just go and do like volume, where I'll go and I'll get on the auto belays and do the arc workout, 30 minutes.
Get the training in.
And climb up and down, you know, the first 1 bolt or 2 bolts if nobody's looking, which they usually leave me alone. So I'll go up and down the first 2 bolts of a bunch of roots and just stay on the wall for at least a half an hour. And that way I find I don't get injured. I mean, I shouldn't even say that, but I don't get injured. I just don't get injured. And I'm much better than I was like in my 30s at recognizing a potential where I just go, and like this happened 2 weeks ago, I had a little tweak or something, and I'm just like, okay, I'm done. And then whereas when I was in my 30s, I would have kept climbing like an idiot and ripped something. But it's like, you know, if you read that back to that Goddard book, The 10 principles of training is 10th principle of training is stay healthy. All the other principles of training can't help you if you're injured. If you're injured, you're just done. You're not making, I mean, there's other things you can do. You can stretch or, but if you've got a tweaked tendon, how are you improving? So, but it's hard. It's still hard even now, especially like I find when you're having a good day and you're really, that's where I tend to get hurt, where I'm having a good day and I start just keep going and showing off a little bit maybe. And then the next day you're like, oh, that was a mistake. Oh. But I'm going to be spending more time at Rumney. Lee and I are working on a new edition of the guidebook, Lee Hanchy and I.
Awesome.
So I probably should go up there and just get on it and see how it feels, I mean, I remember all the beta, I mean, it's not
and
like...
maybe there's some beta refinement to be had as well. I mean, we've got a lot of people trying different ways. Nina Williams is going to be up in a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, I met her when she was working on Speed of Life down here.
At Farley.
So I brought some crash pads. The call went out that they needed crash pads, so I brought some crash pads out and for her at Farley. So that was good. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I think the route deserves all the stars you can give it. I mean, I'd be interested. I'm surprised that more good climbers haven't done it. Really, I know Rumney's kind of it's like if you're a pro climber, Rumney's not. The weather's not so good. Even if
it's hard to find that window.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to go to Spain in the winter or Rumney in October, or you know what I mean? It's like you could have a brilliant week, or it could rain. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone on climbing trips in New England and it rained every day. Like Columbus Day weekend, like 3-day weekend, and I remember going up to Maine, and not just rain, poured rain every day. Oh. It's like, but
well, Alex Magos did it twice.
He did.
So it seems like some people,
I didn't
come
know
through.
That, but what did he have to say about it?
He didn't say much on the comment, like the 8A comments.
Right.
I think he just said it was great, and I think he had 2 trips to Rumney separated by a couple years, and he did it both times.
Really?
Yeah.
No, that's great. I'm just surprised it's not, because to me it's the coolest route I've ever been on, and I'm sure there are cooler routes out west, I'm sure, but I don't know about Jumbo Love and all of that stuff. That looks pretty cool. Jumbo pumping Love.
It's cool in a different way, but in terms of like when you imagine a sport route, like a clear line, it's hard to imagine anything better.
Yeah, and I've talked to people like some trad climbers from North Conway area who've never been to Waimea. I said, you've never been to Waimea? Because people slag Rumney, and it's like, well, even if you don't want to go climbing, if you're a climber, you should go for a walk and just walk up and walk the bottom of Waimea and take a look at it, because it's like, I mean, that's the holy grail. We were always out trying to find new cliffs. So where is the next Waimea? I don't think there is the next Waimea.
I don't think so.
But wouldn't it be cool to find one somewhere in the woods that nobody knows about,
Yeah.
Like how that piece of rock got to be so perfect, and the right end's a little bit crappier, but the main section from Barracuda through, Jaws pretty much. The rock is just, beautiful. It's like, and it's made for climbing. There's just enough holds to make it climbable, and no lichen. I mean, there's lichen at the top, but like Barracuda, I had to clean like the top 5 feet or something, and the rest of it was, pretty much, I brushed it, but it was pretty much clean. Same with China Beach. Same with China Beach. It was pretty much clean. It was not it wasn't like some of the stuff in the East, it's like a, multi-week, Yeah, lichen and all kinds of stuff. It's just like, you know, but Waimea is not that way. I mean, you even look where there are no roots in the main part of the wall over by Aquarius and through there. There's no lichen. It's just this orangey rock with
clean.
And clean. You know, nobody's cleaned that. It's just that's how it was. So we're lucky in a way. You know.
Yeah.
I climb in the Chattanooga area sometimes, and I'm always like, how did they end up with so much rock down there? Either the Red River Gorge. You drive around and there's private property. There's like all these cliffs, you know? It's like they've just got miles of rock. We just don't have that in New England, so we're lucky to have what we have.
The quality, yeah.
The quality. And the thing I like about Rumney is that each of the crags is kind of distinctive in a way. You know, some of them are similar, but I mean, Bonsai is totally different than Waimea. You know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Monsters is its own flavor.
Monsters is its own thing.
Yeah.
Main Cliff is its own thing. You know, New Wave is kind of like
New Wave.
That funky and some of the mica-y rock and stuff. Like this, like why is that there? And you know, the geology is kind of amazing. Main Cliff and that big orange band of quartzite.
Quartzite,
yeah. That's like super solid. You know, that rock is like, what, you know.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Random question. What's your height and like ape index?
5'9", and slightly plus. I haven't measured it,
Slightly
but I'm plus. I've got a long torso and short legs. I identify as a tall person, even though I'm only 5'9".
So on China Beach was like, there are kind of maybe three cruxes. There's like that lower crux where you got the Gaston and you're kind of like a scrunched box.
Yeah.
And then there's the big move out of the break, and then there's like the iron cross at the top.
So I think my short legs help on the first crux. The second crux, I can make that reach. You know, it's more of a power thing than a reach thing. I mean, it's not, you know, for me. And then the iron cross, I can make it, but you know what I mean? Like
just.
So that's, if you're tired, that's going to be the stopper right there, you know? So I can see if you were short, that would be more of a issue, but it's kind of cool. Again, what makes it cool, the bottom crux is going to be harder if you're tall.
Yeah, I'm 6'1".
Right.
It's real hard.
So that's going to be real hard. So that for me, I don't want to say it wasn't bad, but I got to the horizontal fairly quickly, you know. I made that length fairly quickly. My legs are short proportionally. But so it I like that. I like routes that are like that too, where the difficulty evens out, you know, based on your height. I like that. Tsunami's another one like that. If you've ever done Tsunami, like
I haven't.
Well, at the bottom there's like a roof crux that's easier if you're short, and then the top is a big move that's easier if you're tall. So it kind of, you know, so the short climber is going to have not that much trouble with the first crux, and then get stopped at the top, and the tall climber is going to get stopped at the first crux, and you know, I just think that's cool when it works out that way. I hate to have a move or a climb that's consistently like, you know, I climb with a guy who's over 6 feet, probably your height, and it's just interesting to see what we do and what he complains about on the Kilter Board, because they set a lot of shit with like not much high feet for scrunchy undercliff starts, you know, like, and he's just he's just cursing them, and I'm like, well, that's cool. I like whoever set these, because they were, you know. Because he'll always make the long move, skipping the holds I have to use, or you know, that's climbing. It's fine, you know. And that's what I like about outdoor climbing more than indoor climbing, is it does not always, but often evens out. It doesn't always even out, but a lot of times it does, and I think it does on China Beach. You know, I think it does. At least for me, that move at the top is hard, but I can reach it, you know. It's not like, I can't say I'm too short. I'm not. I'm tall enough, you know. That was my problem, wasn't my reach.
Have you seen what Nina does to get around the iron cross?
No.
I'll send you a video,
Okay.
but what she does is from that T hold, she goes out to like a small crimp and then throws a toe onto the ledge,
Yeah.
and then goes up
Oh.
and uses a left-hand sloper that's like kind of lichen covered, switches the toe to a heel, and then does this like
Really?
rose move, like this.
Wow.
I've been calling it the iron rose. She does like a rose move, and then kind of a dynamic match.
Well, maybe
It's like pretty
hold
pretty
needs,
nuts.
Maybe that hold needs to be cleaned. Maybe I'll go next time I go up there and go for a rappel and just clean it up.
Brush off the top.
Because, I don't know. Why not? That's kind of cool. And how does she do off the horizontal, the move off the horizontal?
Oh, that's nuts. She does it the same way everybody does. She uses the slightly higher right foot. You know
Okay.
how there's like
Yeah.
a chip that's 3 inches higher?
Yeah.
But she does it the same way. She's 5'3" even.
Yeah.
And it just is just full extension, and she's super strong.
Yeah.
And really precise.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, and how close is she to sending, do you think? Who knows?
Very.
Really?
She fell. You know that undercling that you took the chalk stone
Yeah.
off of? She fell with her hand solidly in that, trying to get the left hand
Yeah.
over.
I've fallen there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good fall, too.
It is.
Because you're like, your foot is up high and you go out, you pitch. In fact, you pitch off kind of backwards. At least I did.
Yeah. The falls get bigger. It's an exciting the falls get bigger and bigger, and they're always safe, but they get bigger and bigger
Yeah.
as you go up.
They are safe, though, because there's nothing to hit. I mean, that's cool. That's cool about it. But,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Well, it's good talking
Well,
to you. And I don't know if you have any other
yeah.
questions. We've rambled on for a while.
This has been great. Oh, actually, we got one more question.
Yeah.
Who else should we have? Who should we have on the podcast?
Oh, that's a good question. How about Dave Graham? Have you tried to get him?
Oh, I mean, would love to. Yeah.
I don't know if you can, but I think that would be his perspective on it would be interesting.
Are you connected with him?
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
Okay, we'll try to get him.
I would
We'll
try
use
it.
the power.
I mean, I think that would be cool. I mean, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal to him at the time because he was just sending through so many things. But it would still be worth getting his perspective on it and seeing what he has to say, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I started doing this, it was mostly just I was, really psyched about China Beach and,
Right.
working on it. I've been working on it for a while and still having a ton of fun. And I think there were two dream guests. You're one of them, and Dave Graham's the other one. So,
Well, I'm glad to make somebody's dreams come true anyway. That's great. But like I said, I have no regrets about it, and now you've got me a little bit more excited. Maybe I'll get back on it and just see. I'd be interesting to see how hard it seems now, having not been on it for a while. I think I gave it up when I was 38, so I'm 62 now.
Well, I can tell you, the holds are absolutely as stickier than I remember.
Really?
Like I was going up there, it's like nobody's climbed on them. Like new gym holds that are just super
Oh, that's
abrasive.
cool.
It just feels amazing still.
That's cool. Does it get a lot of traffic?
It doesn't get that much traffic. I mean, it gets a fair amount.
Yeah.
I suppose I might be inadvertently drumming up traffic for it because I've
be.
been telling everybody about it.
Because it's I in going back to Rumney, this summer I was surprised to find like lions and tigers and bears. You done that one at Orange Crush?
I haven't.
It's an
but
11.
Yeah.
But the holds were a little, just at the first crux, the holds were a little polished. And I think part of that might be because you're kind of starting in a dirty, sandy area. So I think people might have like dirt on their shoes,
Yeah.
But I never really thought Rumney would be a place that would be that susceptible to getting polished. But, you know, that may be the explanation for that, but I was like, wow, that's kind of polished. Like, oh, okay. It's like an 11. That's a popular 11, you know, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Well, cool.
All right.
Well, maybe I'll see you out there. I'll definitely be out in the fall. So
All right. But you're in California now?
yeah, San Francisco.
Wow. And where are you climbing
But
there?
it's a little bit in Bishop, a little bit. So there's some places up on the coast.
Yeah.
Like there's Surf Safari
Yeah.
up by Mickey's.
Yeah.
Surf Safari is like I still haven't sent it yet, but it's I think a great training route for China Beach. It's just like a little bit shorter, a little bit easier, but a similar type of
Cool.
power endurance. But man, Rumney is my favorite place on the planet. I try to go back every year.
Yeah, if we had a little bit better weather, I mean, it's like the sun's trying to peek out, but it was like this morning we woke up and it was like it had rained all night and then it turned to snow, you know, and it's like that 32 degrees and I don't know. You know how the weather can be here.
I know. Yeah, I know.
I was telling my daughter that this morning because she was complaining about the weather. I said, well, you know what? That's what makes those beautiful blue sky days so special, you know? It's like if every day
Yeah.
was a blue sky day, you'd just be like, ho hum. We could use a few more of them, that's all.